Okay, so everybody, this is 1.14 formative assessment goal, and this section, this lesson that we're talking about was creating a formula in standard form. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. We're going to create a formula that looks like that from a word problem. All right. So what I'm going to do is walk you guys through this. This is a template for you to complete the 1.14 formative assessment goal that we have online, and it's going to be an assessment, and so it's going to go in as a quiz. Quizzes are worth 10% of your grade. So the main idea of this here is to write down all of the things that I underline on your paper, and then see if you can work out the problem by yourself, and then use my description or explanation of this to help you out if you get stuck. All right, so that's basically the process for each thing that we're going to be doing. All right, so here it is. It says Meredith works out on a treadmill. She uses a program that combines running and walking. All right, so the two things are running and walking, so I want to underline that. Okay, so on your paper, the things that I'm underlining right here, circling right here, the things that you should write down. Okay, so we're talking about running and walking, and it says she knows that she runs at 0.16 miles per minute. Okay, so miles per minute, whenever we say per minute, that should clue you in that that's like a rate. All right, now in standard form we do some different things with this, but that's running 0.16 miles per minute. So obviously 0.16 miles per minute, her walking pace, she's not going to be walking at quite that pace, right? So she's not going to be gaining as many miles or portions of a mile per minute when she's walking. All right, so she walks at a pace of 0.07 miles per minute. At the end of her workout, the treadmill showed that her workout distance was 7 miles. Okay. All right. So it says give 3 possible combinations of walking and running times that would result in Elena, or not Elena, but in this case it should say Meredith. Elena is the one on in your actual formative assessment goal. Result in Meredith having a workout distance of, as I'm doing this, I might as well correct it. All right, so Meredith having a workout, a typo here, distance of 7 miles. Okay. All right, and then I want to read the second question here to begin with here, so that I think by doing the second question first, actually, I will be able to, because the second question asks me something that's important for the first. I'm going to be able, in the second question, to come up with an equation. It says write an equation that will relate the number of minutes Elena runs and walks to the total distance of her workout. All right. So total distance of her workout, number of minutes she runs and walks. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and define some variables. All right. So we could say x and y just to keep it in that form that we have. So x is going to equal what? Well, what would x equal? X would equal the minutes running. Let's define that. Minutes running. Okay. And we're going to say y is going to equal the minutes walking. Okay? All right, so we have minutes for each of them, all right? And then at the end, it's going to end up being 7 minutes, all right? So whatever it is at the end, it's going to be 7 minutes, all right? So the number of minutes that she's running, we have to multiply that by 0.16, all right? So 0.16 times x, which would be the number of minutes right here that she's running. And if we add to it the number of minutes that she is walking, well, her walking pace is 0.07, and the number of minutes that she's walking is represented by the variable y. Okay? All right. So there we have it. We just have to, the first thing that we have to do is define the variables, okay? Define what those variables are, and then when we define the variables, we can make some good judgments on how to make it look like that AX, make it look like this right here. AX plus BY equals C, okay? All right, so there you have it. There is the formula for it, okay? So this first question, though, the first question, we're going to go back to the first question, and I'd probably recommend that you do it second question first, like the second question, write the equation out first, all right? So give 3 possible combinations. So we need 3 combinations for this, all right? So, and the combinations for it are going to be an XY combination. We're going to call them an ordered pair of X comma Y, right? Or what I like to do is write it in a table. Okay, so if we can write that in a table, we know that our formula is 0.16x plus 0.07y equals 7. So now, you know, we can go ahead and set up just some numbers. We could plug, you know, it doesn't, you know, there are lots of answers for this one, but they just have to work. All right, so the first thing that we're looking at is, let's set up a table for x comma y. All right, well, what could we plug in for x? Well, if we plugged in 0 for x, what's y going to be? All right, okay, well, let's plug in 0 for x. So let's say that 0.16, and I'm just, how did I come up with 0? 0 is that's an easy number to work with, okay? And, you know, if we're asked to do 3 numbers, all we got to do is one that's, you know, where we have to show a little bit of work on, you know, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but 0 is not that hard to do. All right, so I plug in 0 for x and I get 0.16 times 0 plus 0.07y, and that equals 7. Okay, so I know that 0 times any number is 0, and so I end up with 0.07y equals 7. So if I divide by 0.07, okay, well, let's look at it, right? 0.07, divisor and the dividend, right? So the dividend goes right underneath here. This is the divisor. So remember, when we are dividing by a decimal, we got to move the decimal point over. Decimal point's right here, move it over. Okay, so how many times does 7 go into 700? Well, 7 goes into 7 one time, 700 times, right? Okay, so y would equal 100. So she could just flat out do 100 minutes of walking, and that's it. She's done. Okay? So that's one. So we're done with one of them. Okay? Now let's plug in, let's go 0 for y. Let's plug in 0 for y. Okay? Alright. So 0 for y would look like this. So we get point, now we're going to be solving for x. So 0.16 x plus 0.07 times 0, because I'm plugging in 0 for y, is going to equal 7. Right, so that I know this doesn't mean anything to me, so I'm left with 0.16x equals 7. And I want to find out what just x is, so remember that what I'm doing, these are all inverse operations. So the stuff that we're doing, when we're solving two-step equations, if you're not quite good at solving two-step equations or one-step equations, go back into the internet, look for one-step equations, two-step equations, solving those, get an idea of how to do that. But basically we're just using inverse operations here, and we're understanding that anytime I have a number that's right next to a variable, it means multiply. So if it means multiply, to get rid of the inverse of multiplication is division. So I have to divide by 0.16. Okay? Alright, so when I divide by 0.16, I'll just take out a calculator. Divide by 0.16, I go 7 divided by 0.16. It's going to equal 43.75. Okay, so 43.75. Okay? Alright, so if we need to do one more, that one more would have to be between 0 and 43.75 minutes on the x part, right? Or, I could plug in 50 minutes on the y part if I want to, right? But it'd have to be between there, because if it's outside of those ranges, then we're going to have a negative number, right? So, all right, let me plug in halfway, like halfway between here would be 50. So I could plug in 50 for y. So I'm going to write 0.16x plus 0.07 times 50, and now I'm going to be solving for x, and that's going to equal 7. Okay, so we'll say y equals 50. Okay? Alright, so if y is going to equal 50, alright, then we can plug that in and we can say 0.16x plus, well, what's 0.7 times 50? Well, I know it's 35 something, right? So there's two decimal places. So 0.07 times 50 equals 3.5. Okay, so I'm going to erase this part right here so that I can finish the work on the other part. I'll keep that 4.35 down there for you. Okay, and I'll also keep this one here for you. But let's go back up here and work this problem out. All right, two-step equation. So I'm looking for any, addition and subtraction. So what I'm going to do here is divide 3.5, or not divide, but subtract 3.5, because I want to get x by itself, and so I want to get everything else to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3.5. I'm going to be left with 0.16x on the left side, and on the right side I'm going to be left with 3.5. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and divide by 1.6. Plug that into my calculator, and I say divide by 0.16. Alright, so 3.5 divided by 0.16. And that's going to give me x equals 21 point, we'll call it 21.8. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite this, look at these right here. I'm going to rewrite this table, and that will give me all of my points, and I'm just going to plug in 50 and 21.9, and those are going to be my points. Right, so if I were to list them out, I would list them as, these are the points, 0, 100. Okay. The next point in between that would be 21.9 and 50. Okay, and the last point there is going to be 43.75. Comma 0. Okay. All right, so they could be listed this way. You got it? Or, you can also write it as a table. You can write just like this right here. Just kind of restate that. Make it look better. Okay, and that's it. So there you have 3 points right there, and your 3 points are there. Those are just 3 examples. There are lots of different examples that you can use. When it ends up, it has to equal out to whatever you choose for x, and then you solve it for y. When you do the math and you plug those numbers back in, each of these numbers plugged back in, or if I have an ordered pair, when I plug those numbers back in for your x values and your y values, they're going to end up equaling 7. All right, so if you were to go back in and check, if you plugged in 43.75 for x and 0 for y into the equation, and that equation is 0.16x plus 0.07y equals 7. When you plug that in, you're going to get 7 equals 7. Okay? Same thing for 0, comma 100. When you plug in 0 for x and 100 for y, you're going to end up with 7. All right? And that's it. So you can go back to this and review it and make sure that you understand it. Like the recommendation, like I said, is you go ahead and look at the problem before I even start working on it. Pause it and then see if you can figure it out. And then if you can't figure it out, then use my explanation for it to figure it out. And then get good at doing that. Also, you might want to, as I'm going through and explaining to you these different numbers, You might want to plug in different numbers to see if you can figure it out with different numbers. All right, that way you're getting an understanding of it, and you're knowing, you're completely understanding the concept, as opposed to just kind of writing down what I've written down. Okay? All right. Have fun.